This will be a fun experiment.
It'll be an experiment.
Exactly.
We'll see what happens. Your event is starting. You're live. Okay.
All right, sweet.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to try to run this on time since we have 4 awesome short talks that we're going to try to cruise through. I'm Michael Holroyd. I'm one of the co-organizers on CVJS, which is Where You Are. Anyone who doesn't know about the Charlottesville Slack, that's where a lot of the planning for this event happens. And so if you don't know about that, ask someone sitting next to you. They probably do know about it and can help you get on it. Let's go through some sponsors real quick. First off, Weld Health brought us some delicious pizza and drinks. Do you want to yes, thank you. Do you want to say some words?
Sure. Hey, I'm Austin. Weld Health has been doing what we do for several years now, a couple years independently. We started making medical fitness software for ACAC, and we sell it to gyms all over the country. It's a lot of fun. If you've ever done any work with Epic or EMRs, maybe you can talk to us.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, enjoy the pizza. Enjoy the talk.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Myth Talent, Ron's not here, and no one else I know from Myth Talent's here. So I'll give they're a recruiting firm in town. They were sort of last-minute sponsors for this to help out with some of the logistics, and they're doing a lot of work to try to help just meetups in town in general right now. They're providing sort of people who can go out and help you set up timing and venue and double check that you're actually going to show up on time and those things. So their big pitch is they offer anybody free advice on the Charlottesville job market. So people who are looking for jobs can go talk to them and get really good advice on the market for free, and then people who are hiring can talk to them and use them as a hiring firm. We are here at the Center for Open Science, which I guess segues nicely into our first talker. So I'll let you go ahead and get started and also say some words about Center for Open Science. But thank you for the space. Much appreciated. This is an awesome space to have this event.
All right. I am James Davis. I'm a senior developer and tech lead here at the Center for Open Science. So this is our ugly website that I have nothing to do with. This is our product, the Open Science Framework. So yeah, just a little bit about Center for Open Science. So we are a nonprofit. We don't qualify as a startup anymore, I think. I think CBIC cut us off, but we did win the award last year. But yeah, we're 5 years old now. So, but we are primarily a technology company, although there's more to it than that. But our mission is openness and reproducibility and science and scholarly research in general. There's a big problem with reproducibility and et cetera. And so one of the ways we do that, actually kind of the foundation, and I should have got, our CEO has this really great pyramid where the foundation of that is providing the technology to make it possible to share your data, share your methods. So our software, this Open Science Framework, it's kind of like, I don't know, project management for research, but it's more than that. You can kind of you can link to all sorts of backends like GitHub and Dropbox and whatever, and pull it all together. And there's wikis and there's lots and lots of stuff to it. But it's anyway, it's a pretty cool place to work. So yeah, Open Science Framework. It's free to use. So go check it out. OSFIO. Anybody can sign up and use it. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing. Well, so the team that I'm in charge of is actually rebuilding the front end of this, which we use Django. We have a weird mix of stuff. Django and Flask. It was originally a Flask app, and we're rebuilding the front end as a single page app. We're doing it incrementally, which is interesting too. And we're using a framework called Ember. And we're doing that. We have some other apps that are in Ember. Ember's actually been a really good choice for us. So I'm going to talk a little bit how we test things. So first, we're really lucky because we have people with titles like this. quality assurance associate if you can't read it. And we actually have more than one of them. And we actually have an open position. So if you know of somebody who is good at QA, we are hiring and we haven't found anybody yet. So that's actually like our last line of defense. So I'm going to start pairing back up, which is actually really great because they do really good job. But I assume you all want to hear more about automated testing here. So how we do that. So Ember actually has really good testing utilities built in. It defaults to the QUnit framework, which you may not all be familiar with. It's kind of cool. You can run tests right in your browser like this. So it'll go through and, it's chunking through the site, doing all our automated front-end testing. You can run test in CI. So here it is. We actually have, we've started to do a combination now. So we have tests that are actually running in browser as part of the Ember framework, but then there's a bunch of things we can actually test without having to do that. The Ember build it's not slow, but it's not fast. So if we can test certain things ahead of time, in like our CI builds, they fail faster, and failing faster is good. So we're actually using Mocha framework for that. So these just run with Node and the Chai assertion library there. So there's a bunch of things we can actually test. Say we run these Mocha tests right after we clone down the repository, and just like run those tests. And if those tests fail, we don't bother building the Ember app and actually doing all that, because it just means something's seriously wrong. Our app is we're actually doing a lot of fun things. We're writing it all in TypeScript, which is kind of new for Ember. So I'm now on the Ember TypeScript team. Turns out because there was only like so many people in the world that were doing it. So anyway, that's been fun. Yeah, I went to EmberConf. Go to a conference and suddenly you're, hey, you're doing this stuff. You're now on the team. So anyway, how those work? Let's see. Let me flip over to here. Okay. So we have lots of different levels of test, and this is kind of an Ember thing, but I think it kind of applies to any framework. So there's like unit tests, although they've started calling them non-rendering tests, because a lot of unit tests are not really unit tests. They have dependencies. A true unit test, is really like, you would mock every dependency, and so they're really more like you're testing stuff that doesn't render. So this tests like in Ember, y'all probably aren't familiar with it, but or you may not be, but it has the data store, and there's models, and it's an abstraction at the top of your API. And so like this is a method here. We have this thing called query has many, and this is doing a test for that. And so what's actually pretty...
Can you increase the font a little?
Oh yeah, it is not very legible.
Is there like lights in the front logo?
Yeah, you can turn that down. Hey, that's better. There we go. Much better. And let me see. How do I zoom this out? Zoom and...
I was down there. What was it I can do?
View. Make text bigger. There we go. I don't ever do that. So is that better? More?
One more time. Take it.
One more? I can do one more. We can go even bigger. Okay. Yeah. So this is QUnit, the QUnit framework. So you see we're importing module tests from QUnit. You set up a module.
Can you maybe say just a little bit about like there's like QUnit, Mocha, like there's a lot of name dropping. Like where do these things slot in the bigger picture?
Okay. So QUnit and Mocha are both testing frameworks. So they. I don't know what to say about them exactly. I guess they're frameworks. So they're a way to organize your test so that then you can run them, you know, in a sequential manner.
And that's like Ember gives you sort of the choice of which of these.
Yeah, you can use QUnit. QUnit's the default for Ember. You can use Mocha with Ember, and people have tried to bring in other ones. I think Jest, and I don't know. It seems like there was some other ones. Yeah, with Ember. Yeah, so like we were gonna switch everything to Mocha because it's kind of nicer, especially so Chai is an assertions library, and it gives you these really nice assertions where you can say like, you know, array has member, but it's like this chain dot assertions. But Ember, it likes defaults. You know, it's you know, it's based on the Rails philosophy. So like, if you go with like the regular way of doing things, you have a better time usually. So we've stuck with QUnit so far. So yeah, what this test here is doing.
And you chose not to use Chai?
Well, QUnit. So there's been some attempts to get Chai to work with QUnit, but it works nicely with Mocha. So it's one of those things. Things play well together. So QUnit has its own assertion library. That's like these assert.ok and assert.equal. And you can actually create custom ones, and we've done that. There's some libraries of custom ones you can do. You get basic ones, but so yeah. So this test here, well, first one's just did exist. Says okay, does it exist? And this goes through, finds a record, says okay, does it exist? Is the ID what I expect?
How do you load up like the store with like, because like you know you're not,
Right.
I'm assuming, right, you're not actually.
Right. So here's what I'm going to get to.
Okay, sorry.
So there's a lot of ways to do it. The way we're doing it, and this is kind of the way a modern thing, and I think other frameworks may have this. But you see this const server equals start Mirage.
Yeah.
So there's this thing called Ember CLI Mirage that actually runs a API server in your browser, and so it actually and it's actually really cool. And so we actually have application tests that can go through the entire application using a fake API server that runs in browser. So you can run it in CI and stuff. It's really cool. And the way the API server works, you actually set up models and serializers, and you do all it pulls all your relationships from your data model, and then it uses the Faker library, which some people might be familiar with, and it has factories. So it's like really cool.
But they're all mocks.
But they're all mocks, yeah. It's not hitting a real API backend. So this, yeah. You know, we call it a unit test, but it's really, you know, it's really like it's relying on a bunch of, you know, things like the data store and stuff in Ember, and stuff like that. And I don't want to go too long here, but I'll just show you an example of, this is sort of the other side, and these are, acceptance tests is what they used to call them. Now they're calling them application tests. But this, if you saw when I was over here, when I was on the test, when I first refreshed this, you can see how it's doing a bunch of stuff here, and then it goes on to some unit tests. So
Is this all part of? I came late. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So feel free to say I already covered that. But what you just showed, was that Mocha running?
this is actually QUnit. It's being driven by Testum.js, which is the default, and it's part of Ember. So you know, it's kind of you know, how relevant it is to other platforms, I don't know, but I think the patterns are good there.
Is that running multiple browsers there?
No,
Is
it's
that
actually.
bar up at the top?
What's that?
Is listed like Mozilla, Mac OS X, Apple WebKit? Is that like testing multiple?
No, this is just the you know, that's the user agent
Okay.
string. So like that's actually the yeah, I don't know what, I guess it's weird. Is that really the Chrome user agent in that?
Oh yes.
It sticks Safari and all that in there?
It sure
Wow.
does.
Okay, I've never really paid attention to that. So
We could do an entire
we-
session on history.
we do-
A shit show that is the
Right.
history.
We do in CI. We actually run, if you look right up here at the top, we actually install Chrome and Firefox and run them both in headless mode. So we actually we run all of our tests twice actually, which don't take too long because we don't have too many yet. But
Browser?
Yeah, in different browsers. So we run them all through it in
Chrome and
Chrome
Firefox?
and then in Firefox right behind it. And the tests actually run pretty quick. The Ember build and stuff is kind of the slower part at this point.
How fast is that?
I don't know. How long did it take to run all these tests? Let's see. Done 195 seconds, I guess, to run all. So to run all the tests twice, so that's not long. You know, it's not too bad. But we also don't have a ton of tests in there yet. We're adding to it as we go.
How big is the code base?
Oh, let's see.
Just roughly in lines? Or
Yeah, I think we have like 15,000 lines of code in there right now in that code base. I think something like that.
roughly lines of code for the, I mean, maybe that's not a good metric, but
Yeah.
it's a way to start at least.
Yeah,
for your
you know, I
testing.
mean, let's see. Yeah, there's lots of little components and pieces and stuff, and there's unit tests and things running. So another thing I want to touch on before I take up too much time. Let's see, I talked about that. Showed this off. Okay, so we're also using Selenium testing, and there's been some debate whether it's redundant because we have these application tests that can actually go through. Oh, I never showed it to you. That's what I want to do. Here's the application test. This is actually really cool because you have these cool helpers like visit. You can say visit / and then you can say, is the current URL /? Okay, I'm still there. I didn't get redirected anywhere weird. You can have these some of these are custom assertions we actually built. So assert.found.
Or the CSS classes?
Yeah, those are CSS classes. So we're saying, is there something that's a nav.navbar? And does nav.navbar service name, does it have this text? You know, so this is actually a test for our logged out homepage, which is this right here. So is there a navbar? Does it say OSF home? Okay, great. Does this say Open Science Framework? And then we can come down here, is there a footer? Then we can interact with it a little bit. We can say, so this form right here has a CAPTCHA. Once you fill everything out, you get a CAPTCHA. We want to make sure the CAPTCHA doesn't appear too early. So we say not found. We don't expect to see the CAPTCHA iframe. Then fill in the full name field right here. Put in test user. Okay, still shouldn't be a CAPTCHA. Then put in this, then put in this, then put in this. Then click, I've accepted the terms of service. And, yeah, once I accept terms of service, then I should see a CAPTCHA. The iframe should show up. If I unclick it, click it again, it should go away. Click it, should come back. You know, and that's the end of that test because we haven't filled it out yet. But that's just an example of you can really mock the user in action. And it's really cool to be able to do that in a test that runs in the framework. I can run it on my machine. It runs in CI. There's no special setup for it. But it's testing against a fake API server. So we have our QA team is actually doing most of the Selenium work, but we're doing stuff to make that easier for them. And I'll talk about that just a little bit. So there's something called CSS modules. I don't know if anybody's familiar with CSS modules. It's a way of doing CSS where you localize your CSS to things, components or routes or whatnot, and you have a local scope, a global scope. But what that ends up looking like, so here is what our dashboard looks like when you're logged in. So if I was to go inspect this component, this is a component here, this consent banner, you get a class, and I don't know if you can all see that. Let me see. Ooh, too big.
Like that.
Maybe. Oh no, here we go. Okay. So you see that class, how it has a funny name?
Yep.
And so that's actually an auto-generated name that CSS modules gives you. It's localizing this instance of this component on this page and giving it a name. The nice thing is it's a consistent name. So what we do in our Selenium test is they're actually using these we use it for styling, but the QA team can have their Selenium test actually use this to identify unique components and things within components very easily without having to do big old crazy CSS selectors, nest deep, or add like,
Or have to use XSS.
yeah, XSS or anything like that. They can just do that, and it works out pretty well. There's another thing I learned about recently. I think I can't remember the name of it, and this is an Ember thing, but it could apply in others where it actually adds a HTML5 data attribute. You can add them to everything, and then a production build, it rips them all out. And so you can uniquely identify stuff for like Selenium testing and stuff like that. So anyway.
Can you show the Selenium stuff?
I can't actually because I don't have access to it. Because it's actually, I tried to get our QA team to be here. One of them went on vacation, the other one had another engagement. So maybe another time, we probably could share it all out to the list because all our stuff is open and public.
Yeah,
so we can we'll do that. So
That'd be great.
yeah, because I'd like to. I wanted to talk more about that, but
Can I
anyway.
ask some questions about it?
Sure, of course.
Actually,
Yeah.
why
Okay.
could we
Do you
do
want-
questions while the next person sets up?
Sure,
Are
sounds
you done
good.
with like screen stuff?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool.
That sounds good.
So, which of our other speakers is ready to go? Brent, you want to get plugged in while, and then feel free to ask questions while he's getting all set
I'll
up.
give him a couple minutes while I'm sliding. I'll show you around.
All right.
It's pretty cool.
Well, I'd like to hear both your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Are you gonna use,
So,
you're gonna use
Just use his.
his? Oh, he can just use, he can use yours.
Oh, you can use mine?
Sorry,
Okay,
yeah, I thought
cool.
you
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course. Cool. And then it'll get recorded too. Perfect.
So when, a long time ago,
Let me plug it all back in here.
when Selenium was just getting started and you would basically download the Selenium JS, I'm so far behind on my Selenium version, but it basically was just testing an older, it's not driven by the driver, it is all just basically right in the browser
Mhm.
that we have this, and so what I'm interested in is find out your experience regarding like I really enjoyed Selenium, but it has this, after a while, if you're not careful about how you write them, tests become brittle, like weird stuff
Yes.
happens and it just breaks and you really can't, and so I have just gotten to a point where like Selenium is good and it's nice to watch it drive everything. I just have to expect I'll have to run it a couple times, and I expect that or I'm just missing the best way to use this because but I've heard this from other people. Just like, they overextended the need for the tool or how it's done. So can you talk about maybe what you've seen your team use or
Yeah.
anything like that?
So I guess there's a couple things. One, we're using Browser Stack, so we're running our Selenium test actually on Browser Stack. And Browser Stack is really cool.
Right. That's
and
hosted.
A hosted, yeah,
Selenium
and
will-
hosted,
okay.
yeah, Selenium. You can just load it up any browser in your browser. It's really cool. Like we're a Mac shop, so we don't have any PCs. But if we want to test on IE and Edge, I have a VM that I boot up occasionally. But it's nice to be able to just test stuff Browser Stack. So I think it's kind of optimized for that, so that helps. But yeah, I mean they do like the tests expect things in a very specific state. That's one of the nice things about the tests that are in the framework and the repo is weird. Our code doesn't get merged until the test pass. The Selenium tests are separate. Luckily we have a QA team. At least one of them is a developer as well. We're driving ours with Python. Our backend's all Python. We're Python shop. I said, let's do it JavaScript. They said, we'll do it in Python. So anyway, they went with Python, which is I mean, I write Python too. Nobody here is like solely a front end or solely a back end developer. We do both. But yeah, I mean, if we could change one little thing and that's going to break the test. So they have to a lot of care and maintenance on those. Definitely. They take a lot of maintenance. They take a lot of time. It's been slow going, getting them up, Our QA team sometimes it's just easier for us to just go and test stuff manually, But we're getting more and more, we're building out more and more stuff. It's getting harder and harder to do that. So, yeah.
Okay. So when you say your code doesn't get merged until all the tests pass, is Is that done through like Jenkins, or how is that done?
Through Travis. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do it through Travis. And those are our tests, not including Selenium tests. But because we're able to do these application tests that boot up Mirage, that fake backend, and actually walk through most of the user interactions, it's pretty good, you know. It's not an end-to-end test, but it's end-to-end of the front end, at least.
Do you have a code coverage report?
Yeah, we do.
And which tool do you use for that?
We're using what's it called? Coveralls. Yeah.
What was it called again?
Coveralls
Oh.
well, that's where it goes to. And I'm not logged in. And all of our stuff too is all open source and stuff, so I can actually send out, like, you can look at all of our stuff, like all of our things are,
That'd be great.
yeah, open source. So I can share some of that later if we want to move on with time. But yeah, we have this. Coveralls does a good job of yeah.
Fun design.
Yeah. So
Sweet.
anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
And while I'm getting set up, just to gauge the room, how many, let's start with like React developers do we have? All right, and then Vue, the dark side. All right, so like the other half of the room.
Not Angular.
Angular.
Thank you.
There's always one,
Still cool.
and they're always vocal. Great. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Surprisingly
Nice.
large Ember crew, actually.
Let's have our own
Impressed.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We have a lot of questions.
And I assume that the rest of you are just running your front ends in Rust. So. Awesome. Let's see if I can find the presenter tool. Creative. Yeah, we'll do full screen. Cool. So this is going to be a whirlwind tour of what we do at TwinThread for testing. We're a pretty early company, started about a year and a half ago, and have kind of gone through some interesting testing methods. Most of them we found pretty useful, so I'm just going to run through them pretty quickly. So as an overview, we're going to go through the principles of testing that we follow.
What TwinThread does?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll just skip ahead to that. So,
Just skip ahead, man.
yeah, no, it's fine.
Wait, was there anything good that we missed?
Yeah, we'll go back to it. Right? Yeah, so
You actually could me the clicker, and I'll just pick it up. I could do that too.
that could be fun. So, yeah, what's a TwinThread, you ask? TwinThread is a company that provides industrial, fleet-wide, actionable machine learning. So, it sounds like a lot of buzzwords, right? So we'll just break it down. So industrial, we work with industrial companies. That's pretty much Fortune 5000 billion-dollar revenue plus companies that have thousands of machines. So think like Komatsu with like 90,000 excavators, or 3M. Different companies of that scale. We do fleet-wide, so we're interested in talking to companies that have like 1,000 of the same type of machine. Sometimes those machines are running really well, and some of the machines are not running well. And usually there's operational or data-driven differences between the best and the worst. And so by using TwinThread, companies can drive their worst performing machines up towards their best performing machines, so you have a pretty close to optimal fleet. We're product, not services. 8 employees so far, started about a year and a half ago. Early product market fit. We're iterating quickly, so trying a lot of different ideas, talking to a lot of different companies to get use cases. We have anything from smart homes to factory lines to giant construction equipment. So we cover a lot of different industries, which means we have to stay pretty flexible. React and Redux front end, and as I'm sure you guys never hear, we are hiring. So about me, I'm UVA class of 2016, graduated computer science. My name's Brent. I'm an engineer at TwinThread, and I like to describe myself as a data-driven product developer. I'm also a giant Rocket League addict. Starting to become a problem.
Isn't that what the World Health Organization said?
Yeah. Yeah, my wife texted that one to me immediately. So just a quick disclaimer, I have opinions. Sometimes they're too strong. If everyone agrees with me throughout this talk, it means I probably failed.
We're all rectangulars.
Yeah, exactly. So here are the things that we care about at TwinThread. Here are testing principles. So first, we want to minimize time and code that we spend testing. So if we can get it done in 2 lines in a day, or in an hour, that's going to be great. We want to prevent world-ending regressions, but we also don't care about catching all the bugs so far because we're kind of in the lower product maturity curve. And then finally, we want to optimize for product iteration speed, be able to throw out new features as quickly as possible. Things we care less about, having a higher regression rate. Having totally safe refactoring, there's just too much to build to be changing a lot of things back and like paying down a lot of tech debt. We're managing it, but aren't too concerned with it as long as we find product market fit. And more difficult onboarding. It is a little harder to get on and start developing because you don't know if you've broken something, especially with component-based architectures. But that's a trade-off that we've made and are pretty comfortable doing. What all this means, so we have a lot of automatic generic testing methods, and I'll get that into what that means in a sec. Those automatic generic tests provide a lot of loose guarantees, but they add up to something pretty solid. Most of our testing code is throwaway. We'll go through a lot of different testing methods, 4 so far, and they're all useful for different scenarios, but we've stopped using one of them. So as it becomes less useful, and we have 2 classes of tests, the automatic and end-to-end. In other words, we're looking for Goldilocks testing. So that means that they're not too strict, they're not too hot, they're not too cold. We do have tests up, and again, we're optimizing for product iteration speed. And I just want to get over the idea that your testing methods and your testing strategy should fit your product maturity. And so we're kind of climbing that curve like month by month. Totally hypothetical question time. Your boss comes to you and he says, Brent, your product's breaking too much. Let's spend a day and write some tests that will last us the next 3 months. You look at your boss, you say, that's a lot, that's a big question, what do you do? Well, our answer to this question was component mount tests. So in React and I'm sure you guys are familiar in front-end development, there are a lot of different transitions. There are a lot of different states that your data can go through where the data is missing, it's incomplete, it's switching forms. And so this is a quick smoke test that we do for every single component in our app that just tests, will it render with no props? If we give it no data and no configuration information, is there going to be something on the screen and hopefully nice for the user to look at? We do this by going through every single component in the project. We wrote a little crawler that looks for the word React in a file and finds the main export, either the export matching the file name or the default export, and just tries to mount that thing. And it actually worked pretty well. It's a solid smoke test and reduced our bugs that we were having pretty significantly at first. All right, another hypothetical question. It's 3 months later, your boss has said, great job, that day paid off. We're gonna spend 2 days this time, but it's gotta last 6 months. Well, what do you do? Our answer, we made Redux snapshot tests. So this is the general form of it. We're gonna be making a snapshot of a reducer on a specific action and a specific state of the app. The way that we, actually, before we go deeper, for those of you who aren't familiar with Redux, it's pretty, it can be a little confusing or complicated, and I've done something pretty unwise and tried to fit it all into one slide. But the idea is that you have a core state. So in this case, you just store a name, and it's a string. And as the user goes through the app, they generate actions by clicking on things, by typing, by visiting pages. And each action has a type, and maybe it has some extra information, like a value. Then, every time an action is created, dispatched, we call it in Redux, it's applied to the state using reducers. So these reducers, like a normal JavaScript reduce, take in an accumulator. So in this case, it's the state, the app state. They're going to take into action, so the item that we're accumulating over, and it's going to run a handler. That it's a function specifically made for that action to handle that action and yield a new state based off that action. It's totally immutable, but then once the new state has been generated, it gets swapped for the old state, and bam, you have a new application. So this is the core equation. State plus action equals new state. It's a pure function. Now, what they told you in math class is true. The left side should always equal the right side of an equation. So what we do to create reducer snapshots is first we go through the app and we use it. We go through, we click on buttons, we submit forms, we check out different pages, maybe some troublesome scenarios. And as we're doing that, we're recording an action log of every single action and the payload of the action that has been generated by those what the user's doing. We save all those actions as a giant array. It really can get pretty big, like up to megabytes, to a file, and we check that file into source control. Next, we feed each individual action through our reducers and save the output, save the resultant state of that action as a snapshot. And we use Jest to manage this snapshot. So what that's going to do when you've saved it as a snapshot is if you go back and you change the reducer, the thing that's yielding the new state, and you add a new case that you're looking for, but you want all the other outputs to stay the same. Well, if you actually changed how that reducer behaves, then the snapshot test is going to break. Does that make sense? I know that was a lot of terminology and a lot of things, or it mostly had nods. So we also check those snapshots into source control, and every commit we're going to run that. So the guarantee that we get is that we're not breaking existing functionality in our reducers. So in our core business logic, we're not breaking any of it as we go. That's a slide with code. So finally, you're in. The boss says, "Great, Brent. It's time for real testing."
Can I ask real quick before you jump
Yeah.
to the real testing? So what do you do when you know your code change is going to break a reducer? Is
Yeah.
it just like, I hope this works, like redo all the snapshots, or?
Sure. So we use Jest to manage these snapshots, right? And when Facebook took over Jest and kind of like completely rewrote the tool, it used to have an awful reputation, but they rewrote it and made it into this like beautiful, fast, just sleek thing. And when they did that, they added this snapshotting tool. You get a nice little CLI, and if I trusted myself, I would do a live demo of it, but I don't. And when the snapshots change, you just hit U, and it's going to update the snapshots on Git, or on disk. So when you actually check in your feature, you're also checking in updated snapshots.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah, any other questions on?
So you would confirm, like, yeah, I'm aware this changed because I made a change. So because of the change, it's just there to check. I didn't mean to do that. So it's just, are you saying it's just there to catch like unintended
Exactly.
changes to the reducers? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So are you also using Jest to capture that list of actions in the first place that you're writing to that big file?
So
or
we've.
are you just kind of adding a listener there and saving it to a JSON?
Yep, so we've got this nice little Boolean capture all actions, and it adds them to an array, and then we'll just go into the console and say, hey, give me all the actions, copy paste into a file. It's super optimized.
I like it. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it got us a long way. Any other questions on that? We're about to take a hard pivot. Cool. So boss says time for real testing. What's the tool you use? I know you mentioned the brittleness of Selenium. That was definitely something that we've faced with other products. So one of the questions was how do we find a testing tool, an end-to-end testing tool that's not going to be brittle, that maybe is going to work with us, and yeah, as we change the product, as we evolve it, it's not just going to break every time we make some small like timing issue. That's Cypress. Why is Cypress so good? So first, the API looks synchronous, but everything about Cypress is totally asynchronous. So when we say Cypress.visit form URL, and then Cypress.getHeader, what that's going to do is it's going to visit the URL, and then it's going to wait. It's totally configurable. I think the default timeout is about 5 seconds, but it's going to wait until that header is visible. If the timeout goes, if the timeout runs out, then it fails the test, but it's going to be pretty resistant to adding more API methods. So you don't have to do wait 3,000 milliseconds, and then someday it takes 3,100 milliseconds. It's totally async by default and resistant to timing changes. Really easy interactions. So we can just find an input, type in Brent, and then get the submit button and click it. And then it has full mocking and stubbing of API routes. So what that means is that you can say the submit route should be referable by accessing submit form, and it'll allow you to do this like Cypress.wait syntax. You can also say that the submit route should respond with this data, so you can mock out the route. It's also one of my favorite features is the contains function. Approximate is very much good enough that you can just look for the text form submitted successfully. It will just look for it anywhere in the app, and you can also chain that with, let's say, Cypress.getModal.contains, so only look for that text in a modal. That really saves you a lot of time, especially with there's timing brittleness, but there's also selector brittleness, and it's going to protect you against selector brittleness pretty well. You can take screenshots as you're going, and after this is done, again, I don't trust myself for live demos, but you can time travel to see the results. So you're going to have your tests on the right, and for each individual command of the test, you can click on that command and actually see the DOM state when that command started executing and finished executing. You can step in and look at REST calls and a lot of different things. So for actually understanding why the test broke, it's pretty invaluable. Highly suggest going to their homepage. I only started touching on the features. We are, needless to say, very happy with this. It's not much code for an excellent result, and when it's all said and done, we've spent about 50% less time testing for, I'd say, a more than acceptable result. Yeah.
Have they finally gotten around and made it work on more than just Chrome? Because I know that was like a big thing that people really yelled at them for when they came out.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think Firefox support is pretty soon.
They've been saying that since last November.
This is
a fair thing. Yeah. So the short answer is no. I don't want to defend too far. Yeah.
So tell us about. So is it 50% reduction from the Selenium testing?
Yeah, and I used to do Angular Select Protractor and other kind of interaction-based testing methods, and that 50% figure is about 50% bullshit too. So I did not measure it, but
It's just gut feels.
It feels so good. Yeah.
So, how hard was it to migrate your tests, or did you just start over?
We're totally greenfield. So
Okay.
yeah, this is just based off of past projects.
Okay.
It's pretty similar syntax to other projects. I know at least Roomkey was testing it out for a little bit, and Jerome said that it wasn't too difficult to replicate the same result, especially because it's so much less code that you're writing. So, great. Any other questions about Cypress? Awesome.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have a question. What do you want to do next? So you've got this. What's the next thing you want to do to
Yeah, it's an awesome question. So one thing that I'd love to get is React component prop capturing in production. and be able to do the same reducer snapshots. Like, I think that would be really, really fantastic. Yeah, but we'll see.
Very nice. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks.
Awesome. Someone else ready to go? All right, let's do it. Need any help getting set up?
Perhaps. What do we
There's a
have
whole
in
bunch
the
of
way of
you guys, everyone wants
connectors?
to take a
USB-C or
sprint to the pizza.
You
Feel free.
If you got DVI-L, we can go straight to DVI. You can go Thunderbolt to.
It's probably. Unless, is that HDMI right there?
This
That'll go
HDMI
into
right
it?
here. If you got
Alright,
HDMI,
yeah,
out,
that'll
we can
work.
we can go straight to HDMI.
That'll work.
We can just go straight to HDMI.
Preference for one or the other. Yeah, it seemed very
Go,
similar.
I'll get mine out of the way here.
Thanks.
Hey, Brian.
That's the old man.
How are you?
I'll just give you this. It's
Not
very-
quite.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
You still around?
Very much so.
Are you
Uh-oh. Oh, actually. Right. Alright, keep it quiet while you're eating so we can get the next one going.
Maybe? Not quite. No?
What's happening in Google? Do I need to sprint?
All right. Hi guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan. I work at ChartIQ. For those of you who don't know what we do, we are a professional grade technical charting library. Basically what that means is we make very fancy charts. If you have used Yahoo Finance or E-Trade in the last year, those are our charts, so you have seen them. So before I go too far, I wanted to take a second and give you guys an idea of what our charts look like so that the rest of this will make sense when I talk about testing them. Otherwise, you're going to look at me and have no idea what I'm talking about. This is one of our more complicated examples that has just about everything you can throw on it. Most of what you're seeing here is all drawn in the HTML5 canvas element. Basically, the only things that are not are the two divs that everything lives on and those crosshairs. So we have drawings, and we have the ability to add studies onto a chart, and all of those are drawn dynamically with the canvas. This is a really badly blown out of size with the DPI version of our charts. I don't know where my mouse is.
Still looks good to me.
You can interact with them, you can move around. Oh God. Move around, add various studies. This looks messed up on the display. We have a whole bunch of different chart types that we work with, but those in a nutshell are our charts. Now I gotta get back. Wait, back. All right, so the testing tools that we use, we use a combination of different things for our unit integration tests. We use Karma, Mocha, Chai, and Sinon. Who is it? Brent went over the Mocha and Chai really quickly, so I won't bore you with that. But we use Karma to drive everything. We package it up with Webpack. We use Webpack to grab all of the tests that we've written, and then we use the various different, we use Karma to drive both Chrome and Firefox. When we started doing our testing, before we had this set up in place, we basically had one QA engineer, and he had a large stack of manual tests, and he would go through and he would make sure that everything worked. And that was basically our testing process at the beginning, which is why we really wanted to get this in place. We also do a set of end-to-end tests, and we use WebdriverIO for that. It's a wrapper around Selenium, but it has done all of the work to make all of your tests synchronous. And that also uses Mocha and Chai for its assertions. So we actually have the same setup throughout our whole testing suite on both the unit and integration tests and on the end-to-end tests. Synon, for those of you who don't know it, it is a library that you can use to stub out different functions in JavaScript. You can use it to spy on different functions. It's very versatile. It has a set of functions that will let you sandbox everything, so you can make sure that everything that you're doing in between all of your tests is on a clean slate. We also run, just like COS, we do all of this on CodeShip, and we have a set of NPM scripts. So ideally, every time we are making a change and committing up, we are testing it locally. We go through, we run our linters at the time, and we have that happen with every commit. We used to use PhantomJS.
With CodeShip?
CodeShip, yeah.
What's that?
It's just like your Travis CI. It's just another SaaS.
Runs in the cloud.
Yeah, it runs in the
Okay.
cloud. Just another CI environment.
Okay, thanks.
We used to use PhantomJS for driving all of our tests. The only reason I bring this up is because in the last year and a half, all of the big four browsers have gotten their act together and they've started implementing the WebDriver protocol. So now all of those browsers actually have a headless version. So the lead maintainer of PhantomJS actually stepped away. So he's like, you know what? I got better things to do with my time if there's headless versions of everything. It kind of removed their value prop. So that's not being maintained anymore. Which is why I bring that up.
So which tool drives the 4 headless versions? Or however many?
Oh, so all of the browser versions have a headless mode.
Right.
We do, for us, CodeShip runs on a Linux VM,
Holy shit.
so it is only testing against Chrome and Firefox.
Okay, so it is replaced PhantomJS, CodeShip.
Not CodeShip, but the Chrome driver and the Gecko driver. That is what, if you had scrolled up to the top, and if you guys had caught it really quickly on Travis CI, that's what they were using to drive their tests.
Yeah, we did the same. We used to use PhantomJS too, and then we were actually having some issues with it, and then when
It's not a perfect one-to-one.
When they stepped away, and then that was when Chrome had those, so we just went ahead and switched to Chrome, and Firefox was right behind it. And so yeah, we're same thing on a Linux VM, but it works really well. Like just running it. I mean, we run tests locally on headless Chrome and Firefox
Yeah.
too. You know, just
So it's your script on running on CodeShip spools up headless.
Right.
Right, and then WebdriverIO talks to it.
Right.
Right, but you can still drive them locally, right?
You can still drive them locally, yes. We don't have it because it runs in a Linux VM, but there are Karma launchers and Selenium launchers that you can get on NPM. So, you know, if we wanted to run this on a Windows machine that we had in the office or something, you know, we could go include a script for Karma. What is it? Karma. What's the Microsoft browser? I don't live in Windows land. Yeah, that. Clearly, I'm a Linux guy. There, you know, you can pull in Karma Launcher Edge. I think there's Karma Launcher Internet Explorer, but Internet Explorer doesn't have a WebDriver protocol.
Right.
Microsoft's not going to do it. So you can spin it up on a Windows or a Safari instance. We just don't because it runs on a Linux cloud. But it can be done very easily.
So you check in your code, and then a user will, then all the tests are just run in the cloud?
Yeah, so when on every commit, it will run, we have an NPM script that runs, and we do all of our linting. That was my issue when we started enforcing our linting. And it'll also run UMD headers for all of our files, and it'll do, we have 2 pipelines, so one pipeline will run all of the unit integration tests, and then at the same time we have another pipeline that runs all of our end-to-end tests.
Okay.
And it has a really nice web page. You can look at it. It's got the reporters that you would have if you run it locally, and it lets you see those. I'll come back to that in a little bit. I'll hopefully show you guys some working tests. But when we started writing all of these tests, we tried to come up with some testing principles that we would live by. We knew we wanted to separate all of our tests as much as possible. We haven't really said it explicitly, but kind of the idea with testing is that you want to isolate everything as much as you can to make sure that you are actually only getting, especially with the unit tests, you're only getting that little bit of logic that you want to test. And we knew that we wanted to take our QA engineer's big stack of manual tests that he had written out, where he goes and he like clicks on everything and then interacts with the chart and clicks on something else. We knew we wanted to automate those. We also don't just test on Chrome. We made sure that we picked a tool that would work across multiple browsers. That's kind of why we had Phantom.js and Chrome in the beginning. It's actually why we didn't end up switching to Cypress. We looked at it at one point in time, and they were like, yeah, we'll totally get around to it, and I guess they still haven't. But we also are trying to focus on a lot of our edge cases. You might have something on our charts where we only see it very infrequently because not a lot of customers use it. So we try to, anytime we have come across a bug there, we try to document that. And we're a pretty mature product at this point. I guess the charting library's been around for like 5 years, 6 years, 6 years. So we don't really have too many like new features or refactors, but the 2 that we've done since we started this, we've made sure that anytime we touch a large, especially like a central part of the code base, we make sure that there are tests around it before and after, so that we don't like accidentally screw everything up. Let's see, our unit integration tests. This is pretty basic. I'm not going to go through it because Brent did a really good job of it. It's largely exactly the same. We do have a couple of custom assertions. We use chai. We just wrote some separations that work really well for us so that we are not rewriting things. Makes it easier to test our specific use cases. And we try and make everything match our file system. So we have like a default folder where we do all of the files, and or a JavaScript folder where we have all of our files. Then we have a spec folder that mirrors that. So we bring everything in. We have an engine.js file, and we'll go through and we'll test all of the different functions on that. We do that because we get a very nice output if we do end up breaking something, and it will show you exactly where in the file and in the function something is going wrong. Our big thing that we do that's probably different from a lot of you guys is we test on the canvas. We had initially sort of looked at image diffing, but all of our data that you see is randomized. Can't really read it, but we have a little disclaimer down there. Data is randomized, so for us to use image diffing was not super feasible. We could have done it, but it would have been a lot of images, especially for all of the different things. So what we actually do is we built a pretty large test utility around the function for the HTML canvas get image data. And for those of you who don't know what it does exactly like it sounds like. It will go pixel by pixel across the entire canvas, and it will tell you at pixel 0, what the pixel color is. We had a guy who thankfully built a very efficient color matching function for us. So we actually use that along with all of our CSS setters that we have included in the library to look for specific individual colors. We built out the ability to test for, where's my mouse? Okay, so each of these little things are candles in charting parlance. So we have the ability to check by date. So this is a day chart. Each of these represents 1 day's worth of data. So we have the ability to say, you know what, I need to make sure for this assertion that, let's say, the 1st of May, if I get this to go away. Anyways, the 1st of May should be right there. That we're going to check for something on that day, or we want to check between, say, the 1st of May to the 14th of May. We built out the ability to check by different panels, different divs that everything lives in. So this is actually an image of our first test that Terry built out. It's our hot pink line test. Basically make sure that everything instantiates, that we can add a study, and that we can draw a line across the bottom of that study. That is our really basic smoke test. Let's see. We like WebdriverIO just because it lets us inject different files. So we actually, when we're testing this file, for instance, we'll spin it up on Selenium. It'll load up the file, and then we'll inject in our test utilities, and then we can check for everything, and it'll let us interact with the chart pretty easily. Just like the Jest engines, or just like Cypress, there are commands for us to target a specific CSS thing that is loaded. So what we do generally is we will say, all right, we're going to make sure that we're going to load the page, we're going to make sure that the title there is loaded, and then we're going to run our tests. So that is what we have kind of built all of our testing around. Let's see if I can get, where's my, too many things open. All right, where's my mouse? We're going to see if this will run on the big screen to show you guys what it looks like. I'm guessing the answer is no at this point. Not quite. Really? I know why. That's full screen. All right. So we also built out with WebDriver, one of the things that they recommend is it'll let you, or they will recommend, hey, here's a way to debug all your tests. So we actually generally run all of our tests headless, except when we are looking at them and we're going, that doesn't seem right, or we have broken something, and we're trying to figure out what we broke. There is a way that they recommend running it. You set up the config, it's a little bit more than just a JSON file, which is nice. There's hooks for pretty much everything. We can hook into before a suite, we can hook into before a specific test, we can set globals. But one of the things they recommend is set a Boolean for your debug, and that will let you run all of your browsers in, depending on if you're passing in, say, a debug, run it in headless or run it in a regular browser. We're going to hope this pops up on the screen here. It is not. Man. Of course that doesn't work. Well, that would have been nice if it worked. But we can
Brian, can you change the screen resolution so we can actually?
let me.
Never ask a Linux guy to change his screen resolution.
Yeah.
Be here till midnight.
That's a generous time
I've been
estimate.
there. I've been there. That is a generous time. That's true.
The quick answer is not quickly. Oh man. But it also, you get the nice little, this is what our CI looks like too. It has, your custom reporter, and it'll tell you, you can, really? And it will go through and let you know that all of your tests passed or failed.
Can I ask, it seems like a lot of the subtleties of the charts is probably like animations.
Yes.
Do you guys have mechanisms for getting in like at just the right moment, checking some sort of like transition, or is that kind of like outside the scope of the automated tests?
So we try and go through when we've got our tests, especially our end-to-end tests, we're looking for like specific things afterwards. So what we'll use the injected scripts for is getting to that transition, essentially. And it's a little hard to display, but we'll check, we can have the assertions running beforehand, and then we can inject a script, interact with the chart, or we can use WebdriverIO and interact with the chart. We can click on some buttons just like you would
Right. Like, I guess
anything
like
else.
when you're comparing pixels, it's more like, okay, before, let an action finish, check it after. It's not so much like, let me make sure that this is fading from white to red at the right moment. Do you know what I mean? Like,
We don't really check that.
No,
Okay,
it's
I
not
was
something we
curious,
check.
yeah.
Everything gets
It sounds too
redrawn like
complicated,
every
but-
second. So we do at certain times for performance, like disable some of the drawings every single second, just so that you can, interact with the chart and it'll respond to you quickly.
Our QA engineer runs frame rate tests, but he has to run that on an actual physical box.
Right.
And just see if they degrade over time.
Gotcha.
Once you start running them on the cloud, it's not really indicative.
So fast, yeah.
Actually,
Not
our
a fair
tests.
comparison.
Yeah, it's not really a fair comparison. Our tests run fairly efficiently in the cloud, unless Selenium does something crazy. We too have seen Selenium act up at times.
You said you're checking canvas every second.
We're drawing on the canvas basically every second.
But when you do the canvas testing, how often are you doing it?
Oh, when we do the testing, what we generally do is we'll use WebdriverIO, we'll perform an action, and then we'll check the results. So as soon as it gets done, its synchronous function of, okay, I'm doing this, then or they have a way to pass in asynchronous functions so that as soon as, we hit the callback on a function, we can say, all right, now, check it then. But that is pretty much a nutshell how we go through and are testing the canvas.
Very cool. Thanks. Good bonus. All right. I guess we have one more 15-minute and then a 5-minute. Is that? Who was doing?
Here you go.
Was there someone else who was giving a little super fast Selenium thing? Maybe not. Okay, never mind. I take it back. So we're on track then. Perfect. Yes. Surprises me.
Great. All right, so my name is John Cleveland. So I build and sell this product called Zippy Meals. It's a SaaS system for Meals on Wheels operations around the country. I am not hiring. We do not have enough revenue yet to hire anybody, hopefully sometime. I'm on the Seville Slack channel, JSCiliaV, and if you ever want to email me, john@zippymeals.com. So yeah, so I've been using Selenium for about 3 years now. So you will notice that the list on the left is quite a bit smaller than the list on the right. I actually, just before this, removed some curse words that I had on this side.
Thank you for keeping it family friendly.
Yep, I figured that would be important. So yeah, so why in the world? So I'm a startup. I write about 80 to 90% of the code for the product. I stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning, many nights. Why in the world would I spend my time writing Selenium if they're a pain to write, pain to maintain, documentation is not very good. They can be really slow, and the error messages are just awful if you even get one, right? Like if you even get an actual message. But it turns out the pros is like huge. So there's a gigantic caveat. I don't know where Brent is, but the situation that Brent described, right, where you've got like something where you're like iterating fast over stuff, and maybe it's kind of an exploratory product, and you don't really exactly know what you're building. Yeah, like Selenium, I think would just be a horrible choice for something like that, right? So my system is more like, we talk to users, we get fairly concrete requirements, we spend a little bit of time doing design work on UI, and so then when we implement something in the UI, like it's gonna be there for like a long time type of stuff, right? So it's a different type of process and a different type of product. Let me show you, I can even show you like the live. So here's the actual, this is the actual live running site. This is our demo account. So yeah, so I don't have a QA department. It doesn't exist. So basically Selenium is my QA department. That's what I use it for. I write all the Selenium tests using WebDriver. That's pretty cool to know. I didn't even know about WebdriverIO. I'm gonna have to take a look at that. But all my stuff is just straight raw WebDriver code. It's written, the system, the backend is written in Python and Django, so I write my tests in Python. I do think it's pretty cool in Selenium that your QA people can write in whatever language they're comfortable in. I think that's probably one of the pros I forgot to put up there. That is kind of nice. But anyway, so yeah, I've spent a lot of time writing Selenium tests in the last couple years, and I mean, they've saved my butt many times, right? I'll go in, I'll change something in module B. I'm positive I didn't screw up something in module A. Positive, right? Go run the Selenium test. Oh, something breaks. I mean, it's happened over and over. And I deploy sometimes I will deploy multiple times a day. I deploy, I'd say, an average of 4 to 6 times a week. So the process of regression testing for me is like huge. Like I want to be in a state where I can talk to a customer at 9 a.m. in the morning, I can code something up, and I can call them at 3 o'clock and be like, bam, it's done, it's up there. But when I deploy it, I got to make sure that like I didn't break stuff all over the whole system. So I'm going to show you a little bit of, how many of you guys have actually seen Selenium WebDriver code before? How many of you have written it? Wow, okay, that's actually more than I even would have thought. I'd be curious actually to talk to you guys about it afterwards. Maybe we can share some horror stories. So this is, like I said, this is all Python code. One of the things that I learned kind of early on in the process of writing these tests, so I write like really dumb code, like really repetitive stuff, because what I was finding was I'd write stuff in kind of a slick way, or I'd create functions, to reduce some of the repetitive code, and then a test would fail, and then I'm like debugging like all this other code, right? So I write this stuff that's just like horrible code, but it's really easy to debug. So when something fails, I kind of know like right where it's at that it fails. So I do all this stuff where like, I'll put something in a text box, one by one, rather than like writing kind of like utility functions or whatever to do it. I found that this technique works pretty well. So yeah, so I am gonna try to do a live demo here. I'm sure it will wind up, something will go horribly wrong, but let's see if I can actually get this to work. I think so. The other thing I didn't mention is, so I don't run the headless tests because about 2 years ago, when I was sort of trying to get that working, I don't remember now what the problem was, but I definitely had some problems with it, and I just didn't have time to mess with it. So I was like, screw it, I got to move on. I need something that works like now. So actually, one of the things that's kind of on my to-do list that's like 800 million items long is to look into the headless testing, because I'd love to be able to run these actually on my CI server. So right now, basically what I do is I run them all locally, and then, okay, everything passes, it's good, and then I go to my, I'll deploy from my CI server. But it'd be really nice if it could just run directly from the CI server. So let me see if I can actually show one of these guys running. I think it is pretty cool, actually, when you actually see them going. I don't know why it's not popping up. So yeah, as usual, right? Live demo, nothing ever works right.
Destiny.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't know why it's not popping up. So normally it brings up another browser window, and like this test in particular goes through and it fills out, like, there's a couple places in the application. I can show you in the live application. What that thing is doing is basically it's selecting a client, and then it's going to the edit form, and there's like there's like 100 fields that's on this gigantic monstrous form, and it's going through every single one of them, putting in information into every single one of them, and then clicking save, and then checking and making sure that like everything actually saved correctly. So it's invaluable for me, because I can't do that every single time I deploy, especially when I'm trying to deploy multiple times a day. So from a standpoint of regression testing, it's just freaking awesome. Like it saves me tons and tons of time and tons of trouble, despite the fact that I fight it, at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes and stuff. So it's been a good tool for me. I'm definitely going to look at that WebdriverIO. That sounded could be very helpful, because the asynchronous stuff is really tricky too. Like with WebDriver, I don't know if you guys have to do all the weights and everything, but like it gets pretty complicated sometimes getting all that stuff to work. So
is there some common knowledge for like the speed up one expects when switching from using the actual browser to like a headless mode? Does anyone have any like
Speed up in what?
does it
like
go?
how fast the tests run?
Yeah, do they run faster in headless mode? Do you know?
I mean, with Phantom.js,
I would assume it was a lot faster. Is that not the case, or is it pretty similar speed?
Sure. I mean, it's
I'm not sure. I know it's faster.
Okay, yeah.
Like, what laptop do you have? What cloud box are you running it on?
Yeah, I was just imagining
Yeah.
like getting
I
to skip all the actual
like low
rendering.
end EC2 instances
Yeah.
that slow down a few times.
I just get sick looking at them.
Fair enough.
Like,
Fair
that's
enough.
why I didn't show all of them, because it's
Yeah.
like epilepsy inducing.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Very cool.
So you're using WebDriver, or
Yeah.
you're using, okay.
Yeah, I guess you could just call it straight raw WebDriver. It's and I think too, I know what at the last company I worked with, the testers, they wrote like whatever it's called, Selenium or whatever, and it's the little thing that runs down in the corner of the browser. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah, exactly. That was the stuff they write. That's not what I'm talking about. In fact, I read, I think somewhere they're actually gonna, Selenium's dropping that support or something. Did what? One of the versions of what?
One of the versions of the latest version of Firefox broke that functionality.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I think it's when they started signing plugins.
Okay.
Since it was an open source IDE, so nobody signed it.
Oh, geez. God. Okay, yeah, that's kind of bad.
Well, if you want to keep using it, you have to go back to the older version of Firefox.
Okay.
And you can run that from a profile. if you
Okay.
want to.
Okay.
That's what I've had to do for some of these.
Gotcha.
So I
Gotcha.
think with Selenium, I mean, so I'm going to WebdriverIO, you could use async and await to do most of what you're doing there asynchronously with kind of pseudo-synchronous code.
Oh yeah, it's just a pain. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. This is like writing WebDriver code, like the raw WebDriver code is. I mean, I think it's hard. I mean, I don't know. You guys that have written some of it, you may think differently, and you know, but it's as hard as writing the actual application code, right? Like, so yeah, finding something to kind of ease that, and a lot of that is because of all the asynchronous stuff that. I mean, this is all I mean, everything on this thing, everything is, yeah.
Right. Those are pain.
Well, the async waits, all of the,
Yeah.
I mean, every single thing that I do is, presence of element located, visibility of element located, because every single thing on the page is dynamically loaded through a bazillion AJAX calls and stuff. Like, there's hardly anything. The actual DOM that comes back from the server is like, a skeleton div and a couple little containers, and everything else is all dynamically rendered. And so every single line of like WebDriver code is basically like is all these like these weights basically. So any other questions?
Do you spin it all up in just Chrome, or do you use, does WebDriver let you simply use multiple browsers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I actually, because of our product we sell to Meals on Wheels, these are nonprofits. So like I've tried to keep the cost as low as possible. So our product, we basically say it only runs in Chrome. So if you want to use it, you got to use Chrome. So far, all of our customers have been totally cool with that. It's great. So I've only ever had to worry about supporting Chrome basically. But what I understand is that like this, like, where is it? That variable lowercase driver up there, I forget exactly where that gets instantiated, but that's an actual Chrome driver. It actually points to the Chrome driver binary, sitting on my machine. From what I understand, what you do basically is, you set up, you load up your Firefox binary, put your Edge binary, whatever, right? You load all that stuff up, and then you instantiate them one at a time. But it means that they, from the way that I understand the way it would work, they're running, if you're testing for 4 browsers, that freaking test is running 4 times. And it's going to take, I mean, the whole suite takes like, for all my stuff, takes, I don't know, maybe between 20 and 30 minutes, which like is a long time, right? So if it took like 30 minutes times 4, like that's kind of a big deal to me. Especially when I'm trying to deploy sometimes like multiple times a day. Like I don't want to wait, because then what happens like when one of them fails halfway through, it's like so yeah, I think that's what you'd have to do if you're testing for all the browsers. You've got to load up all those binaries and run them each individually. There's no like magic where you can run it against one of the WebDriver binaries and it just sort of magically works for all the browsers. But I've never done it before, so I don't know for sure, but I think that's the idea.
One of the nice things is when you set it up, when you instantiate your drivers too, if you have like browser stack, browser stack for local testing, you can instantiate it through browser stack, so you can use your Selenium tests to test iPhone, Android devices, and or SauceLabs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't use them, but I mean, I think there's, like you said, I think there's like really good cloud-based tools to be able to, sort of augment, this process. Like if you're running, a whole team of people, right, and you've got a huge code base, and you've got zillions of Selenium tests and stuff. I think it makes sense because you can send them out and they can run them simultaneously on 16 different servers, type of stuff. Obviously, running just locally, that's it's not like that. So, yeah.
So I had a question for the fella between you two. The one who was for Cypress. Who was the Cypress? So how would you consult with this fella to say, all right, you got all these web drivers. go to Cypress. How would you guys, would you consider it if he said it was 50% better?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no
And
question.
how would you consult him to say, start with what?
Interesting question. I mean, you wouldn't have to rewrite anything. Just start writing new tests in Cypress, and then if you need to change an old test, write it in Cypress.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
super
just start from
complicated.
scratch, right?
John, thanks for the presentation. I just noticed that your demo account is on Shaver, and right next to it was a street called Failing. And
Oh.
I think that'd make for a much more apropos picture.
What was it? Yeah.
So close.
Yeah.
Dorothy's Failing.
Good, good point.
It's a real place.
That was a crazy, crazy coincidence.
So yeah, I just think it'd make for a better picture.
Yeah, yeah, duly noted. Too funny.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a bunch.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Shockingly on time. I know that was a lot, super fast. So thanks to all the speakers for putting together like nice, concise talks. I had a lot of fun hearing, I don't know, just like 4 totally different takes on it. Is there a time we need to be out of here? Can people hang out for a little bit and chat?
We can hang out, and I think it recorded like pretty well. The audio was
Yeah,
good,
we'll see.
and I tried to capture the slides there, so I'll put that link out later if you guys want to refer
Yeah,
to it.
anyone who wants to share their slides, if you could post it on the meetup group, that'd be awesome. That way anyone who couldn't make it can like check out some of that stuff. And yeah, I feel like in my head at least that generated more like questions and interest than like a clear definitive answer for how to tackle testing. So yeah, I guess we can hang out and there's a bunch more beats and stuff. Yeah.
Is there time for a few more questions?
Yeah, I would say let's just stand up and then like people, yeah, ask questions to whoever's interesting, and because just in case anyone needs to run at 8 o'clock, they can bolt.
All right.
Thanks everybody.